This is the Clean Energy Show with Brian Stockton and James Whittingham.
Hello and welcome to episode 48 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. Wow, it's Inauguration Day, Brian Stockton, and this is our Inauguration special. How are you feeling? How is your emotional level of goodness? Mine's very high.
Oh, it's fine. You know, I'm not watching any of that. So
you don't care. You don't care about anything, do you? The world could do what it wants. The fascists can take over. It's fine with you.
I do care, but stuff like that is boring as hell.
Okay. Well, I guess you didn't see the poet laureate, 22 years old, take down the House with a rousing poet of poetry, a poem of poetry. There, I said it.
Oh, sorry, I fell asleep for a second.
And you certainly
there.
missed Lady Gaga, a favorite of Wolf Blitzer's, he says, sing the national anthem. Boy, she gave some great interpretation to that with a disco beat and the ball that came down over the Capitol, shining lights. I guess I'm pulling the wool over your eyes just because you didn't watch. But yes, no, I loved it. It's wonderful. And you know what, Brian? There was a line in Joe Biden's speech. I call him Joe because he's not that jackass who left. He said, a cry for survival comes from the planet itself. That is in his speech. The climate activists and followers are saying that this guy is serious. This guy is almost Bernie Sanders serious. That, you know, they're canceling the Keystone pipeline today, day one. I mean, they're not leaving it for other things like that little COVID thing. They're canceling Keystone. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I wanted to wait for the official announcement, but that was on my list of things to talk about that week. So is today his first day and he's going to cancel it today? Or is
I've seen confirmation from America Press that it's actually in the document that he released. That is his plan. So it is confirmed.
Yeah, I did want to talk about that. I would encourage anyone to look at the CBC broke the story for this.
Yes.
And if you're interested, look for the CBC story on cbc.ca or CBC News. And did you look at the picture, like the graphic, the map that went with it that explains where the pipeline goes? Did you see that?
Let me guess, it goes through my backyard. No, it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't.
But it already goes through your backyard because I found this very surprising, but there's already a Keystone XL pipeline that goes from Alberta all the way through Saskatchewan, through Manitoba, and then it goes way down south to the Gulf of Mexico. And the one that just got canceled or is being canceled is really just a tributary, like it's a second. Yeah. Like there's already a pipeline that goes from Alberta, a Keystone XL pipeline that goes from Alberta to the Gulf of Mexico. They're just wanting to build another one, and it goes straight south from Alberta through Montana, but it's really just a second arm of the same
And it cuts
pipeline.
through a corner of Saskatchewan, doesn't it? And our politicians here in our government have been touting it as creating jobs. Well, it's not going to create jobs. It's not. It's not permanently.
Yeah. But it's just going straight south. So I imagine the point of it is it will increase the flow, but there's already a pipeline. So I'm confused. And then the other thing that I always think about when the pipeline discussion comes up is the other thing you can do is Google a map, say, Google pipeline map of North America. And there's already dozens and dozens of pipelines of oil and natural gas that go all through North America, from Canada to the U.S. and the U.S. down to Mexico. Like there's dozens and dozens of them. And one pipeline more or less isn't going to make a huge difference. That's not really the issue. The issue is, burning the stuff. This pipeline that's just canceled would, I guess, slightly increase the capacity of the Keystone, but there's already a pipeline that goes where they want it to go.
Well, to listen to the political rhetoric, it's the end of the world because this one pipeline is getting canceled. And not mention the fact that it goes through many states and First Nations land, and there's environmental concerns when it crosses the bodies of water. And then it's the thing that you and I talk about is it going to be a stranded asset in a few years or, 20 years? I mean, because these things have to last a long time. And if you're trying to increase your capacity for something that's going to start decreasing, your existing capacity is going to be more than enough. And you have to live in a different world in order to think that that's not going to be the case. You're obviously not listening to our show.
Yeah, no, we're past the point where nobody should be building new infrastructure for fossil fuels, because that obviously those assets are on the way down, they're on the way out. Sure, it probably makes some sense to make existing use, financially of what's already there, but spending more money, no, absolutely makes no sense when it's all going to go away.
So if I put Keystone XL pipeline in our show notes, I'll probably get death threats.
That is entirely possible. Yes.
It's ridiculous. It's such a heated debate. And the Alberta government bet at least $1 billion, some say $1.5 billion on this pipeline. They basically bet that Trump would remain president and it would get built. And, well, I'd be upset, and Albertans are upset. This is a province. This isn't a large nation throwing away $1.5 billion, Brian.
No, and I do understand why people are upset, because it's a real lightning rod for discussion, like I say, and on the pro side and on the negative side, everybody's talking about it. But, the issue isn't how many pipelines we have. The issue is the price of oil, the price of tar sands oil, which is the most expensive oil and is going to be the first in terms of stranded assets. It's a real mess, and it's unfortunate just because people in Alberta will be able to now point the finger and blame Biden and blame Trudeau and say, oh, it's their fault now that our economy is collapsing. But it's not. It's that, the price of oil is collapsing.
And
that's
it's their own blindness to what's going on. Every week there's stories and reports of how things are changing. A look at last year, I think EV sales were up 40% year over year, which isn't great for an EV revolution. However, every other car that had a gas engine went down, shrunk in size. So by comparison, EVs are moving forward. Government policy is moving forward. Technology is moving forward, which is something we have a keen eye on. And here's a pet peeve for you, Brian. A nasty pet peeve.
Clean energy pet peeve.
My clean energy pet peeve is that the Keystone Pipeline Company is trying to greenwash us. Did you hear that they boasted only recently, as a last gasp, desperate plea, we're going to power it with solar?
Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was pretty funny.
Did you have a good chuckle at that? Because that's just ridiculous. Let me give you an analogy. I tried to come up with an analogy, and I'm not good at coming up with analogies, Brian. You know that. I'm not good at coming up with very much. But if you are a man trapped in the bottom of a deep swimming pool, or say a pit, and it's filling slowly with water, and somebody says, hey, we're going to take a thimble of that water out every, let's say hour. You're still going to drown. You're not going to be jumping up and down and saying, hey, I'm pro thimble, because what's going into the atmosphere is that hose. And if you take a little bit less out of it, it's not going to make a difference. You can't be putting stuff into the atmosphere. I'm not the person who's screaming the earth is ending, but.
That was a fantastic analogy. I think you should be the new poet laureate.
Oh, my God. And she says she wants to be president, too. And I believe she might be one day. She was amazing. Anyway, Brian, the other night, you remember last week, the storm was coming. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Dark clouds gathering over the city where we live in central Canada on the prairies, and big storm was coming, and it was forecast.
Are you being poetic again?
No.
You're talking about when you got banned from Twitter?
You will never hear poetry from me. Trust me. I can't even pick out a Hallmark card well. I'm just saying that the storm was coming, and they upgraded it to 120-kilometer winds. Right now, we have a wind warning that just ended, threatening 90-kilometer winds. Well, those 120-kilometer winds came, and they stayed here for 2 long hours, and I don't know how you felt, I felt like I was living through a hurricane, because I was up and my power was out. We haven't had a power outage for that long. It was, where we live, I think 11 hours is the longest power outage I've ever had in my life. I've never had one in the wintertime. I pumped up the heat in the house to anticipate the power outage because I'm smart.
Well, that's amazing, because we've gotten really lucky. There's been lots of power outages, including on Christmas Day. I don't know if you heard this, but the neighborhood just next door to us their power was out on Christmas Day, like for 4 or 5 hours in the afternoon, so like right when we were cooking our Christmas turkey.
Really?
All of our neighbors in the next neighborhood over were all without power. So I don't know what it is, but we've just been lucky. We haven't had any power outages for years now.
Really? Well, that is lucky because we've had more than I've used to have as a kid. And it's horrible. My kids, when they're home, they come out of their holes and they're like, help, math, I need math, give me internet. They're like crazed lunatics. My son came into my room the other day with his phone charger not working, and he had just woken up, and it was like the most desperate I've ever seen another human being in my life. It was just awful. But we went out. Around midnight, the kids stayed up late, and we went out into the wind, and I have, for you, Brian Stockton, a recording of that wind, 123 kilometers an hour for 2 hours, gusting 2. It's blowing snow. It's not that cold. Oh, it's so cold. My kids are standing against the wind and then it's knocking them over. Not me, though. I have much more resistance to wind, as you know. It can't blow me over, no. But it was scary. Now it's coming through my speakers. It won't go away. It's hooked up to Bluetooth automatically. The wind is haunting me, Brian. It's haunting me. Anyway, it was awful because I heard creaking on my roof, like somebody was walking up there. Like if there was a floor up there. I've never heard that before. It was like, oh, wow. And it's like, is that my solar panel about to get ripped off? Is it my roof about to be ripped off? Whatever it is, it's not good, and I can't go inspect it. However, I lost siding. There, I've said it. I've lost siding to my house. I had damage from this storm. Are you surprised?
Really? No, your house, you're very near the prairie. It sticks up very high.
It's a wonder the damn thing's standing.
The whole thing didn't blow away.
Yeah. There's no protection. I have to plant poplars or something, or build a large wall, a large border-style wall, and make the Mexicans pay for it around my house just to keep the wind down. What do you think?
I think you should plant some massive trees, which will then blow over onto your house.
Yeah. That's right. And they have. The big trees have fallen down around town. And I think they had 143 kilometer an hour wind gusts just south of here. It was in the 140s, the low 140s.
Wow.
That is nasty because, even when we're not used to getting 100 kilometer an hour gusts. And when that happens, trees fall down because they haven't, that's sort of the threshold for them. We usually get them in thunderstorms. I have never seen a storm like this in the winter that was so violent and so long lasting. It was something, and my sympathies go out to people who have to live through storms like this because I was a bit on edge and didn't get a good night's sleep. However, I'm glad that the roof is still on my house and we can move forward. What did you want to talk about this week, Brian Stockton, aside from the fact that the Keystone XL pipeline is about to be vetoed today by executive order?
I don't have too much here. There was a big fine levied for Toyota. General Motors has invested something around $1 billion to build electric vans in Canada. And then speculation that the Model Y standard range that was just released will soon be eligible for the $5,000 Canadian federal EV rebate.
Which I heard rumblings of last week, and that is an interesting development for us in Canada to be able to get a rebate on that. And I think one of the loopholes is that it has a 7-seat variant, which is sort of written into our laws. And I'm hoping do you think there's any chance they'll upgrade those plans with a new budget or anything this year, or they're just going to keep what they have?
I imagine they'll keep what they have. There's probably a federal election coming in the not too near future. I've lost track, but I would say they'll probably stick with it for now until there's another election.
All right, Brian, I wanted to talk about a couple important anniversaries this very day. Not only is it the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States, which is pro-climate, pro-EVs, which is going to speed up the things we're talking about, which means we're just going to have to work harder. podcasting came into reality on this day 20 years ago in a New York City hotel room. That's when they developed the first RSS feed, which stands for Really Simple Syndication. And they started to use it for blogging, and it was developed on this day. And there was a meeting with Adam Curry, former VJ from MTV, who you remember because, you're my age. Something of a rock star at the time, I guess. Not so much anymore. He was visiting from Belgium, this guy Adam, and he was living at the time, and he wanted to meet with Dave to share an idea he had, and that was Really Simple Syndication, and that's the birth of podcasting. Some people argue if that's the birth or not, but regardless, the seed was planted 20 years ago today, just like the conception of a new thing.
Yeah, and of course, you were an early Canadian podcasting pioneer. How long ago did you do your first podcast?
Good question. It wasn't too quick. I think it was around 2005. But I remember there weren't very many people podcasting. And the people who were really popular were developing audiences because they got into it like a month before I did. But because suddenly, magazines started writing about it, and then they started going towards people, and I don't know. It was weird. I remember this young couple. I have vague memories. I think they had sex on the podcast, and they became very popular. It actually turned a lot of people off, but it actually became popular. And that was the unpleasant birth of podcasting. But 1 year ago, Brian, was the first documented case of COVID-19 in the United States of America. 1 year ago today. So today, 400,000 deaths later, we are celebrating 1 year of COVID. Happy birthday, COVID.
Yeah, happy birthday.
It's, we're the worst province in Canada. Did you know that? Are you aware of that? Are you following that?
I did know that, but I now know a couple of people who've gotten their first shot of the vaccine.
Explain.
So it is happening around here. So I keep expecting and hoping that deployment of vaccines will speed up. So hopefully that happens.
Are they healthcare workers or the elderly?
I know one healthcare worker and one elderly person that have gotten the shot.
How elderly do you have to be? I'm asking for a friend who can almost eat at Denny's senior menu next year.
Yeah, well, right now they're just sticking to the long-term care facilities and the, sort of seniors' homes. So once it rolls out to the greater senior population, I think they're going to start at 70.
70? Yeah, it's getting close. 54. And, like I've said, I'll die if I get it, Brian. I'll die. I know I'll die. I just have to avoid it. And the new variant, is coming for me. So I also wanted to talk about all kinds of other things because you know what? Joe Biden has ordered that the tailpipe emission standards be revisited. The Obama-era tailpipe emission standards that set forward fuel efficiency standards, which caused automakers to not only make their cars more fuel efficient, but also to make more EVs, because you had to have a certain amount of EVs to offset the giant SUVs and pickup trucks that weren't electric. So that is good news. That's going to move the EV movement forward quicker in North America, and hopefully Canada will follow suit because we generally follow what the Americans do. Are you happy about that?
Yeah, that's great. And I was going to mention Toyota and their massive fine that they just paid, $180 million penalty for not complying with the Clean Air Act reporting requirements from way back from 2005 to 2015. It's a long story, but they just dragged their feet and didn't bother filing a bunch of papers. And they knew if they filed that they would get, fined for certain things. And so they appear to have done a calculation and they're like, we'll just slough this off and eventually they'll slap a fine on us. And so they're, paying a $180 million fine in the U.S. for not living up to the emissions rules from literally over a decade ago. It's terribly sad.
Very disappointed in Toyota, and they look foolish right now. I don't know what to say about them. They keep saying, well, we've got a magical battery that's going to come out, and wait, you'll see. We've got solid state and it's going to change the world. Well, it's just more battery fluff that it's hard to take in. I see Chevrolet is teaming up with Disney just today. They revealed a Magic of the Bolt EUV ad. So Walt Disney Company has released has worked with Chevy to create this small crossover SUV based on the Chevrolet Bolt platform. And of course, there's just a little girl in the car and little electricity lights up street poles. It's everything you would imagine. The ad agencies today, they're just not trying, Brian. They're just not trying with electric vehicles. They have to do better.
Yeah, that's, well, not surprising, I guess.
So did you see that Porsche announced a entry-level Taycan, like $80,000 US, which is practically human being affordable?
Yeah, that's something I think they were planning from the beginning, but of course they were selling the more expensive variants first. So 80,000 US. So that's still, over 100 Canadian. So it's an expensive car, but it is a Porsche. So, the costs are coming down. That's great.
I look down the street and I see Cadillac Escalades. And when you trim them out, they're over $110,000 Canadian. So
wow.
Brand new, yeah. And you see people driving those around. So why not get a Porsche that runs on electricity and 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds, which is not as fast. It's twice as slow as the other versions, but some of the other versions. But it's nice in that. It's electric, and if you're a guy who's buying a Porsche and you don't want to drive it too far, I forget what the range is, but it's in the 200 mile and change range. So it's not, but if you want to cruise around town and look cool, that's your car for your weekend car.
No, I'd gladly have one of those. I mean, my standard range plus does 0 to 100 in 5.6 seconds, so only slightly slower than the Porsche. So I'm a little disappointed in that time, but
yeah,
hey, I would take one.
It seems almost like they're restricting that, like just to upsell the other cars. I wouldn't be surprised.
It's probably a software lock type of thing for sure.
But I love the styling, especially inside. Outside is nice, but inside is particularly nicer than I think Tesla's and some of the competition. But then you have to pay 2-3 times as much. So of course the inside better be nicer. We'll see. Yeah. I don't know. But it's a nice car, and I'm going to have 6 of them by this time next year. There, I said it. So Germany has generated 9.7% of its electricity from solar in 2020 and almost 50% from renewables overall. You have to keep in mind, Brian, that Germany is a cloudy country. It's flat, doesn't have a lot of wind, and it's doing very well in that department so far.
Yeah, and they've traditionally had a lot of coal, so they've had to, they're still burning coal, but slowly getting rid of it. So, good for them for making progress.
Their total coal generation is 5% lower than in 2019. Actually, the conventional generation is down 12.2%. That's the coal part. So that's pretty significant in 1 year. I mean, yes, there was a pandemic, and yes, factories were shut down for a little while. Brian, trivia time. Guess which U.S. state has the most charging points per capita? It's not California, so I'm going to ask you and see how you do.
Per capita, wow. Wow, there's no way I'm going to know that.
I'll give you a hint. It's in the Northeast.
Minnesota.
Try again. Think Bernie Sanders.
Massachusetts?
Vermont. It's Vermont. What can I tell you? So let's, you get the buzzer. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, I found that surprising. That's why I mentioned it, is Vermont has the most, I guess there's not too many people there. That helps. You have to factor that in.
Yeah, it's always a balance of, people and maybe a lot of people have to drive through Vermont to get somewhere else. Maybe that's why.
Maybe Saskatchewan, where we live, will be
exactly
in that area too. What else did you want to talk about this week?
Yeah, so continuing with legacy automakers, so General Motors has announced that BrightDrop, a new division and brand of their company, is going to make a electric delivery van. They're going to do it in Canada. It's going to have a 250-mile range. They're investing 1 billion Canadian dollars in the plant in Ingersoll, Ontario, to make these things. They currently make the Chevy Equinox SUV there, and they're going to take that $1 billion and start making electric delivery vans. And FedEx is one of their main customers for this.
So, yeah, it's not like a cargo van. It's like a little truck, a little cube truck, like a FedEx truck, right?
Yeah.
That sort of form factor.
FedEx sized.
So it's not small. And those are the types of things that work well for EVs because you don't drive very far and you generally know how far your fleet is going in a day and you can charge overnight. It works very well for things like delivery vans. So do you know where that part of Ontario is? Is that like towards Hamilton? Where are we looking at here?
I don't know. I'd have to.
You lived there, man. You lived there for many years. I was born there, but you lived there.
Ontario is a big place, but let me just bring it up here on the old Google Maps.
A big and unusual and sparse place in the Northwest.
Ingersoll, Ontario. It is. Wait for it. Wait for it.
This is exciting.
Wait for me to zoom out on the map. It is. Where is it? It is between London and Hamilton, so it is quite a bit west of Toronto, a couple hours west of Toronto.
Ha-ha! I was kind of right then. I mean, Hamilton's one hour west of Toronto, so...
Yeah, I think that's the area where the stuff like the auto manufacturing tends to be.
So you have sort of a workforce there. You've got your skilled workforce.
Yeah.
Working for you. Anyway, so Bloomberg New Energy Finance has come up with a few things that they want to predict for this year. Since we're the start of the year, I thought I would have mentioned a few of them to see what your response is. $500 billion of investment again, but there will be some stock market bumps along the way. They're talking about the market in clean energy investment. Do you have any thoughts? Are you waiting for a bump?
What's the question? They're expecting things.
They're expecting.
I don't understand the question.
It's not a question. It's a statement. And the statement is a prediction that $500 billion will be invested again, just like it was last year, which was crazy. $500 billion will go into clean energy stocks, but there will be some bumps along the way. That's all. They're just saying all they're saying is we're going to repeat last year as far as clean energy. You know, it seems like Rivian is raising all this money, and I feel like people have got Tesla fever, but there's not really the best time to jump into Tesla unless you're a mad person. And I couldn't do it right now. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, considering how much has gone up 40 times or whatever since I considered it. So I don't know. They're also saying sustainable finance is going to continue to roar on. That is to say that banks and institutions are getting into the comfort zone of being able to invest in clean tech. And that's important because sometimes you have to convince them, and it takes a lot of work to convince them. If you take, for example, the geothermal electricity plant that's happening in the southern part of our province, they're spending 6 months to convince the banks through tests to show. But everything else sort of has data on it now, like wind and solar and batteries. Yeah,
and I think this was happening anyway. Obviously, money is rushing into this space, but the success of Tesla in the last year, the way the stock has shot up, it's given everyone a pause, and now it's real. I mean, assuming it doesn't all collapse tomorrow, but the success of Tesla and their position now in the market as really one of the biggest companies in the world. Everybody's like, oh, okay, this is for real now.
So solar actually had a good year last year in spite of the coronavirus. It ended the year at 20 cents per watt, which is low. And I think this is the first year they're predicting 150 gigawatts of solar this year. I think it was around 130 last year or something like that. So they're going to break 150 for the first time and maybe even push 200. So that's what the solar market is looking at this year. They're looking at wind going up by 15% in this 1 year, which is good. So good. A breakout year with 4.4 million passenger EVs sold globally. So there's 10 million electric vehicles on the road globally, and adoption will continue to accelerate in 2021. And driving this will be generous subsidies. So lots of people got subsidies, tighter fuel economy regulations, fleet purchases. I think that's going to really take off, Brian, is fleet purchases. You're looking at buses and small trucking and delivery, and even short-haul trucking is going to take off. And I think we will see our first semi-trailers this year. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just overall, 2020 was huge for this space, and it makes sense 2021 would be bigger. I'm totally expecting that. And again, because of the new administration in the U.S., I don't think it's necessary to have that administration because it's the cost that's driving this rather than regulation. But again, because there was an administration change, everyone's looking at it and going, oh, okay, this is for real now.
So remember, California and a few other states decided not to go with Trump's rollback of the fuel economy standards, and some car companies decided to sue on that level. Well, now they're screwed, and we saw them back out as the election sort of played out. Remember, we talked about it in previous episodes of the show. We're going to also see, and this is something you're interested in, a jump in heat pump sales. They expect a record year for heat pump installations with the potential for sales of more than 12 million units globally. This would mark the greatest year-on-year growth since 2017, and 1 million more units that were sold in 2019. So that's starting to take off. It's still slow. It's still, are we going to see any breakthroughs in that area, price breakthroughs or technology breakthroughs, do you think, that are going to speed it up? Or is it all going to be policy?
No, that one's going to be slow coming, I think, the heat pump heat. It'll come, but it's going to be slow.
Still, I'm surprised to see 12 million units. Even most people don't even know what a heat pump is. Stimulus funding and continued demand for reversible heat pumps is boosting sales in Canada. This is an American company, American publication saying that. The U.S., China, and Japan will also see greater demand. But yeah, I guess they're getting pushed in Canada. Have you heard anything like that going on here? I have not.
Well, not specifically, but there was a great article on Clean Technica a couple of months ago where a guy did a study about the effect of, he looked at sort of like medium-sized business type buildings, like small business buildings, and what would happen if you switched out the natural gas heat with electric heat pumps, and found that it was typically going to be like cheaper and obviously better for the environment, except maybe in Alberta and Saskatchewan because we burn so much coal. But we're still just in the beginning stages of talking about this stuff. It's going to be a long time before people's mindsets for burning natural gas for heat. This one's going to take a while.
So they are predicting that the metal prices for batteries are going to not fall this year, but battery prices will. There's been some disruption from COVID-19 in lithium, cobalt, nickel, and manganese. All my not familiar with the periodic table like I used to be in grade 10. Those were the days. Do you have any thoughts on what's your favorite mineral, Brian? Gold? Which you can buy with your Tesla stock at will?
No comment.
Okay. Okay, so natural gas is going to pick up this year. Boo for that. Hydrogen is going to double, apparently. The electrolyzer additions of the hydrogen plants will reach commissioning that will double in 2021 what they had last year. So that's hydrogen may or not. I will stand by and watch, people, but I don't think hydrogen is going to take off that quickly. Oil supply toils to meet rebound in demand. So oil markets in 21 will be dominated by the speed and extent of the recovery. So we'll see and keep an eye on that. They expect crude to be up above $50 a barrel, but that's not great. Not as far as we're concerned. I remember our premier here 10 years ago said it would never fall below 80 again, ever. And even then, I
Hilarious.
knew he was an idiot, and we shouldn't be following him. So
Yeah, so there's a nice article here from Drive Tesla Canada, and they did a little bit of math and a little bit of snooping, and they do, in fact, speculate that the standard range Model Y from Tesla that was just released will soon be eligible for the $5,000 federal rebate, and they based it on where, just looking at the numbers and where the purchase price sits, it's just below that $55,000 cutoff. So this is not the 7-seater. They're saying that the 7-seater will not be eligible because it's unlikely that they'll have a version that is cheap enough to make the higher versions qualify. But so Tesla probably right now is working on a software locked version like they did for the Model 3. So they'll come up with a software locked version of the Model 3 or the Model Y, limited to 150 kilometers. It's a special order item. You got to phone them to get it, and it'll only be, 35,000 or something, or 45,000. Nobody will actually buy it because nobody wants a 150 kilometer range Tesla, but it makes them eligible. So I would expect an announcement in the next few weeks whether or not this is happening. I suspect they're just waiting on either an approval from the federal government or waiting for Tesla to just actually make this software locked version.
What do you think of the space of because we're starting to see videos of the Model Y 7-seater. A lot of naysayers said there's no way you can put a third row in there. And looking at it on the debut, you couldn't really tell. What did you think of the videos coming out? Is it useful at all?
Oh, yeah, it's useful. If you've got small kids, I wouldn't put adult humans back there. But the thing I was most impressed with was the flat floor in the back. I don't know if you saw that video, but there's always a problem with a hatchback or an SUV when you want to fold all the seats down. So you've got to fold the third row down, fold the second row down to get your big cavernous cargo space. And it's often difficult to make that a flat floor. So if you've got to slide something in, you don't want it to, hit on a bump or something. So Tesla came up with a really ingenious solution to that, which is just the sort of like in the back of a Tesla where there would be a gas tank in a regular car, there's another storage pit, a little hole, and they cover that with a cover. And so on the Model Y, they've made it basically reversible. So if you're using it with all the seats up, you can put it one way and it goes a bit deeper and it gives you some space. But if you're folding them all down, you just flip it over.
That's pretty cool.
It comes right out, you flip it over, and it's just propped up a little bit and makes it a flat floor. It's very clever.
No other car does that. It's time, Brian, for our How Rich is Brian Stockton segment. As we take a look at the Tesla stock, it is up $10 on the day. However, on the week, I see we're down a bit, 841 US, almost 842, but we were at a high of 858. How do you feel about your wealth today?
Well, I think it was higher last week, so I guess I'm bummed out.
I think I'd sell everything you had, man. I think I would sell, get rid of it all in case there's a meltdown of the economy, or if Elon gets shot with a poison dart. Or did you see the CEO of Volkswagen got a Twitter account today, of all days?
Oh, really?
When the days when they're switching around presidential Twitter accounts, he got one, and he trolled Elon Musk in his first tweet. He said, "Hey, I'm on Twitter," and then he said that we're outselling Tesla. Elon, I look forward to good discussions in the future. So I'm not quoting him verbatim, but he said that we're the ID3 is number one in Germany and parts of Europe. So he's trolling him. Good. Let's have some healthy competition and get some EVs out there, I say.
Yeah, for sure.
China has debuted a 385 mile per hour magnetic levitation train. Where do you stand, Brian, on levitation trains?
I'm a huge fan of levitation. I used to belong to the Natural Law Party of Canada, which was magician Doug Henning's political party, and their whole platform had something to do with levitation. I don't remember exactly, but he was gonna become prime minister and get everyone to levitate, something like that.
When I saw this story, I thought if I could encase myself in a magnet and strategically place other magnets throughout the house where I was levitated, and I could just sort of tiptoe to the fridge, because that's really the main place I go, and the bathroom, I wouldn't have to deal with getting up, because getting up's hard. Have you noticed gravity increased?
It certainly feels like it. So you're talking like that sounds like a Wile E. Coyote type invention there, like maglev shoes. That's what you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about armor, like a vest made in that would get sucked up to the ceiling, or partially sucked up, so that I could levitate around the house and not use any fuel economy. Anyway, trains are expensive. They're not cheap. You got to buy the land, you got to buy bridges, and the levitation part comes later. So this is interesting. McDonald's is now offering delivery of their delicious products to Tesla supercharger stalls. So when you go charge up at your supercharger, there's not a McDonald's there. There's no McDonald's, but they will deliver to that stall as you're charging. And this is going to be a short-lived service. Why? Because charging times are getting shorter and shorter, and they're just not going to be able to do it. If you're charging for 20 minutes, is that going to work, Brian Stockton? Is there any use in this at all?
Yeah, I think that's useful. I don't think these charging times are going to get so short. This will be useful for a few years for sure. Delivery of food is always useful.
Coming up later in the show, it's the lightning round. And that's where we talk about headline after headline thrown at Brian Stockton. We clean up the extra news from the week. Brian, what else do you have?
Just one last story. It's not really clean energy per se, but it has been revealed that SpaceX has purchased 2 offshore oil rigs to be used as spaceports. Literally, they're taking oil rigs, they're going to turn them into spaceports, and they're going to be literally launching rockets from them off the coast of Texas, I believe. And this is a better use of oil rigs, I think, than pumping that stuff out of the ground and burning it.
What a world we live in. That's all I have to say about that.
I mean, they could be literally flying to Mars from these offshore oil rigs.
I think we should
it's crazy.
Make catapults, and people should travel by catapult. If it's done right, man, it's safe. Much safer than driving, as long as you don't miss your target, which is a big pile of My Pillow pillows. So, Driving.ca, which is run by a Canadian newspaper chain, has come out with a story that says that interest in EVs has gone up during the pandemic. Now, this is something I've had lots of anecdotal information on, but nobody can really specifically say why that is. And the idea is that one idea is that they're feeling safer traveling by car because nobody wants to go on public transit, with people sneezing on you. And I can't even go to Canadian Tire with getting sneezed on. So 79% of Canadians say they feel safest traveling by car, which is actually, it's wrong. 79% of Canadians are wrong. It's actually probably one of the least safe ways of traveling, but they feel safe. And 38% are saying they're more conscious of their life choices and the impact on the environment compared to the start of the pandemic. So that is a survey saying that it is real, it is happening. I just don't know how to say. Do you have any theories? What would you say if you had to explain why that is? Why are people changing their feelings?
I think some of those things make sense. There's definitely people out there who had to consider other modes of transportation. They might normally take transit to work, and suddenly they have to think about getting a car. So you've got a whole raft of people who don't own a car, hadn't thought about buying a car. They're starting fresh in terms of their research. And, some of them are considering electric. And, what was the other part of that?
They feel safer is one, but they also are more connected with the environment, more thinking about the environment and their living choices than they were at the beginning of the pandemic. Explain that one.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know, people just have more time on their hands or different time on their hands. Like people are working from home and, I don't know, maybe they've just got more time.
Maybe they don't feel invincible
perhaps
anymore. Maybe they feel like maybe we better take care of the planet around us, that nature may come to kill us one day, in fact, like it is now.
Well, and think about those people who live in a place like Toronto where you've got to work an 8-hour day and you maybe have like a 90-minute commute each way. So, you're I don't know. Those people, I think, have got a lot more time on their hands.
All right. It's time for the lightning round.
Clean Energy Show Lightning Round.
Brian, it's a favorite part of the show for many people. We get quickly through the headlines every week. Now, the Mach-E is not charging fast, not quite as fast as even a V2 charging rate. Your thoughts? The Mach-E is not charging fast. The Mach-E is not charging fast. It is sucking at his new vehicle and is not living up to Tesla.
But what if you're at a big, fast, 150 kilowatt charger?
Doesn't matter. They're not charging fast.
It's not. The charging's not working right.
Maybe they can fix it through software updates, but they're saying it's charging slower than V2 charge rates. I'm just delivering the news, man. I'm not making it. According to a recent study, if Europe wants to become the world's first to reach net zero by 2050, it will have to double the share of electricity produced from renewables by the end of the decade. They're planning to do that.
Yeah. And it's probably quite possible, quite doable.
VW ID4 in winter. Well, it turns out the ID4 has some interesting preheating things going on. I'm disappointed in Tesla, the way that they treat their batteries. I'm concerned that Tesla is not insulating their battery packs. I know even the Nissan Leaf insulates their battery pack as well as heats it. So if you're not insulating it, you lose that energy. I seem to keep my heat fairly well once it gets warm. And anyway, apparently the heat pump in the Nissan Leaf, the new Nissan Leafs in Europe, are actually using more electricity than if they didn't exist. So perhaps they're running longer or something like that. They're just not very efficient. Anyway, the VW ID4 is looking good so far. We're going to follow that up in the future. The VW microbus that was promised to us years ago. Remember the microbus, the VW bus, the sort of the modern electric version of a VW mini van bus thing? The cool little thing that you smoke with a joint and go on a trip and sleep in a bunk in the bed there?
Yeah, I watched lots of videos. I mean, they even had a working prototype that they had all kinds of journalists take a ride in, but that was 2 years ago now?
That was more than 2 years ago, I think, and it was supposed to be out now. Now they're delaying it to 2023. Please express your disappointment.
I'm extremely disappointed. That's a product I would look at buying.
Okay. Well, Tony Seba has done an interview with PV Magazine, and what they had to say was very interesting. They're talking more about the U curve of energy. That is where you make extra energy. You oversize your systems. I encourage everyone to go read that. So Hyundai, this is I put in your court, is to end domestic sales of Kona EVs after recalls. That is from Reuters. Have you heard that?
I hadn't heard that. I know they've been having some issues with that car. I think, I don't know, we just have to wait and see if they're able to resolve that somehow.
You might have bought a Kona. It could have been you, man.
I definitely considered it.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at the picture of the EV600 electric van. It's pretty good size. It's a pretty good size, and it looks cool. I think that would be a very cool thing, because you're always putting it in gear and slamming it into gear and hitting the brakes, and this way the brakes will be regenerative, and I'm looking forward to that. So it's a $1 billion deal, that factory coming to Canada. And GM has agreed. Suddenly, we are a EV manufacturing leader. I thought it was a bogus pipe dream for us to start, when the politicians started saying we're going to manufacture EVs here. Well, all politicians around the world are saying that. Are you surprised that we're starting to get EVs in Canada made from the factory?
Not too surprised. I guess the danger is that hopefully General Motors doesn't go bankrupt because they're so late to the party. So it's taking some government incentives to make this all happen. So hopefully this isn't money down the tubes.
Governor Cuomo of New York announces the largest ever award of offshore wind power contracts. That is 2.5 gigawatts by a U.S. state ever. They're going to produce 70% of the power from renewables by 2030 and 100% by 2040. That is a good target and a good ambition, and something we're just not doing here in Canada. So there's rumors going around now of an electric Corvette crossover, just like the crossover from GM not GM. What am I thinking about? The crossover from Ford, using one of their sport brands, the Mustang, into a crossover. What do you think? Is this different somehow? Because the Corvette's a very expensive, it's not a Mustang. It's an expensive sports car. But would it be good for them?
I hadn't heard that before, but it makes sense. I mean, if, Mustang and Corvette are the most valuable brand names that these companies have, it makes sense for them to use that to expand their brand. I mean, everyone was surprised when Lamborghini came out with an SUV, and it's still a bit of a
Porsche.
Crazy SUV.
Porsche too.
It's still a bit Lamborghini-ish, but it's much more of a mainstream vehicle than Lamborghini is known for. So, I don't know. I think it makes sense. I mean, it's not something I'm interested in, but, a Corvette crossover, they could probably make that work.
Do you think that this is a huge sign from the legacy brands, which like to highlight their sportier vehicles and have that sort of cascade over the rest of the brand, because Tesla's coming out with cars that are so fast, including their everyday Model 3, which is not marketed as a sports car. There's a high-performance version, the performance version of the Model 3 and every other Tesla, but generally speaking, Tesla's kicking their butt in that regard. Do you think this is a response to that?
Yeah, well, they have to make use of what they've got, and what they've got is a long history, 100-year history, and through that 100 years, there are certain brand names that stand out that people recognize, that have brand name recognition. So, the fact that electric cars are also tend to be quicker, it makes sense for them to utilize, those quick brands and to make fast cars, because that's what they have to do to compete.
So the New York Times has published a new article on the lifetime cost of ownerships of electric cars, and they've done it in an interesting graphical way. Spoiler, they pay for them. They're higher priced on the lot, but they pay for themselves over time. So if you crunch the numbers, you'll see that buying an electric car isn't actually more expensive now. It's actually cheaper. The title of the article, if you're interested, is "Electric Cars Are Better for the Planet and Often for Your Budget Too." So look that up on the New York Times.
Yeah, and I think that's why, again, this potential $5,000 federal rebate for the standard range Model Y is a big deal, because it gets people into the Model Y in Canada. It's still kind of an expensive car, list around $56,000, gets it down to $50,000, still very expensive, but as you say, over time, cheaper.
Volkswagen winter isn't a worry for modern EVs. They're going around saying that our new ID4 is great for winter because it has heated seats and a heated steering wheel. Something the Nissan Leaf has had since day zero, almost day zero, day two, I would say, because they came out with their first model in the States. I'm disappointed that Tesla didn't have a heated steering wheel. It seems like, why wouldn't you have? They didn't even have heated seats. They seem like they're just making it for California, and I know they've been criticized for that. And I still think they need to deal with cold, especially in Norway. People are going to say, hey, my Tesla's not working as well as the VW ID4 or whatever.
No, and the heated steering wheel is now starting to appear on the Model Y and the Model 3.
Right, as well as heat pumps and to use less of your battery on stuff like that. So here's a weird one. The spicy chili pepper chemical, an extract from chili peppers, will not only give you heartburn, but it can boost solar panel efficiency, says a new study. They are maybe putting capsicum. I can't say this. Capsicum. My mouth. It does.
Something
it's
like
not
that.
very. I have to do yoga with my mouth. I have to warm up before the show. It makes chili peppers hot and has energy boosting on efficiency. And this is just one of those weird things where you put a little dash of chili pepper in your solar panels and they will have more efficiency. There's something about speeding the passage of electrons from one part of it to another. That's all I have to say. So,
well, and I've often wondered how these kind of breakthroughs are made and how they make, these incremental improvements in battery chemistry and trying new chemistry. And I think ultimately they just got to try bunch of different things. It's trial and error. But who would have thought of trying chili pepper powder?
So Hyundai, who makes pretty good electric cars, efficient ones at that, have failed to expand their plug-in electric car sales in 2020, unlike everyone else. Are you disappointed in them, and what's wrong?
Disappointed. Yeah, they're just not making enough of them. They may have battery supply issues, but if they made twice as many, I think they would sell twice as many.
Customer deliveries of the Tesla Model Y is starting already in China. People are lining up for that, which we talked a little bit about last week. There's another Wall Street analyst who's saying that Tesla will be a $2 trillion company in just 1 or 2 years. Does that mean I should buy more Tesla stock? Or are they full of crap?
It's entirely possible. Yeah, I think that analyst is thinking mostly of the autonomous taxi network. If that works and they're able to flick a switch and create that network, that's a massive increase in value for the company, potentially almost overnight.
Well, Brian, that's it for this week, and it is a new era. The Trump era is over. Long live the James and Brian era, I say. Or maybe not.
Hear, hear.
Okay. We're going to see you, everybody, next week. Have a wonderful week. The future is bright. The sun is shining. And we look forward to talking to you next Wednesday on the Clean Energy Show.
Yeah, see you next week.